Hey students, this is Mrs. Chyme, and I'm going to be going over the digestive system notes with you in this video. The first screen that you see is an updated way to fill in the blanks on your notes. So this is your notes page that you'll see on the Google slide that I will put on Classroom. Again, you can print off and write if you want, but if you don't have access to a printer and would rather not do that, then what I've done, instead of making each individual box on these lines, it got really small and I didn't realize it would be that way. I made text boxes here on the side. I did one on each side, and you can just double click in that text box on your slide and then start typing in the answers. If you'll put them in order or number them, that'd be really great. Just even though number 1 has several blanks, just number each blank starting with that first line, your blank need blank found in food. That would be 1 and 2. It would be just really helpful for me to grade that if it's numbered, so I would appreciate that. So I just wanted to show you this change in the notes. As we do this remote online learning, we'll both figure out ways to do things better, and so it's always good to stay flexible. So this is one change I think you will find helpful. Well, let's get started on the notes then. If you don't have it printed off or you're not ready yet, just pause this and we can get going here in a sec. Alright, so you are what you eat. We'll see that in this video and the next one and the activities that you're going to be doing, that everything that you put in your mouth, food or drink, is going to be broken down into very simple chemicals that will then be used by your body to create what you need. So the chemicals that you eat are the chemicals that your body will use to build itself and to do the things that it needs to do. Okay, so this set of notes will just give you some basics on the different organs of the digestive system, and then we'll get into a little more detail in the next video. But your first blank there says your cells need nutrients found in food, and so when we say that you need to eat, that's why, because all of your cells need the things, chemicals, both macronutrients, which would be your carbs, lipids, sugars, proteins, amino acids, and also the micronutrients, which are your vitamins and minerals. The first one is to provide energy. Your cells will use the glucose that's created or broken down from your foods to get energy. Also materials for cell development, growth, and repair. And this includes those things that I mentioned: proteins, which you find a lot in meats, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water. We'll talk more about specific food groups and the chemicals that they make up and where to find them in next week's set of activities on nutrition. Number 2, maintain homeostasis, and a good point to remember is that no food has every nutrient, so it's good to eat a variety of foods. The function of the digestive system then is to break food down into small molecules that will be absorbed into your bloodstream. We talked this last week about how oxygen and carbon dioxide are in your bloodstream that allow you to bring oxygen to your cells and get rid of the carbon dioxide waste. Your bloodstream is also used for these nutrients that you absorb if you have a healthy digestive system in your small intestine and large intestine. There are 2 main kinds of digestion: mechanical and chemical. Mechanical digestion is a physical process. That's just the movement of body parts to break the food down into smaller pieces. If you are someone who likes to cook and you need to cook a carrot in the skillet, if you just put a whole carrot in there, it's going to take a while to cook the whole thing. Versus if you chop it up into pieces, it will cook a lot faster. So the same kind of thing happens with your digestive system. You have several parts that will break that whole food into pieces so that the digestive process can happen a lot faster and be more efficient. That's what mechanical does is break that into pieces. This is obviously, we'll look at the different parts, but obviously your mouth, teeth, tongue, these are all things that do that first. Your stomach, though, and intestine and esophagus all also move to mix the food. Chemical digestion is, on the other hand, a chemical process that will actually chemically change the food, the large compounds that's in the food that you eat. Your stomach acid, bile, saliva, other enzymes will do this. And if you recall from bio or chem, enzymes are proteins that speed up chemical reactions. Happens a lot faster if you have enzymes, which digestion needs to happen faster than it would without the enzymes, or you would get nothing from the food that you eat. This will turn it into kind of a mushy substance. So you see the final end product of that when you go to the bathroom. The organs of the digestive system are broken down into two sections. They can be accessory organs, and these are organs that food doesn't actually pass through. So your tongue and teeth, you're like, well, I use those in the mouth, but the food itself doesn't go into your tongue or into your teeth as part of the process. The salivary glands, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. So these all help. That's why they're an accessory. Like an accessory to murder is someone who helps somebody commit the murder. These help digestion, but they don't actually aren't involved in the chemical digestion of it. Digestive tract is the organs that food does pass through. That includes your mouth, esophagus, stomach, small and large intestine, your rectum, and anus. I mentioned this before in class before spring break, but remember that your digestive system is basically a tube that starts at your mouth and ends at your anus. And we talked about that as part of the lymphatic system. Your digestive system is going to be subjected to whatever you eat or drink and swallow, and the stuff you breathe in the air can get in there too. But think of it as a tube within your body tube, and that's your digestive tract. So we'll start at the beginning, at the top of the tube with the mouth. And this includes the tongue, the teeth, saliva, and they change food into a soft mass, which is called a bolus. A bolus is just another name for a specific quantity. If you have used or had patients that have had IVs that you've had to do, I'm not sure if y'all do that with CNA this year, you may next year, but whatever amount of medicine or whatever they get at a specific time is called a bolus. So this, once you chew all your food, that wad of food is called a bolus. It will then go down your esophagus, which is a muscular tube, and it moves the food to the stomach using a specific type of contraction called peristalsis. It's kind of like squeezing a tube of toothpaste. When you squeeze it, there's a bunch of toothpaste in there, but when you squeeze it once, a little bit comes out. There's still stuff in there, and it kind of squeezes the tube. That's kind of what your esophagus does, except it's not just one squeeze. It'll be a series of squeezes to get, it's kind of squishing that bolus into smaller parts so that you don't have a ton of stuff coming into the stomach at one time. But that is what peristalsis is. Next, your food goes into the stomach. Now there, you see the hamburger here. There's actually a muscle right here where the esophagus joins the stomach, and then where the stomach, the next place the food goes is the small intestine. There's another muscle here, and these are called sphincter muscles. You have one in your rectum as well, and a sphincter muscle and your bladder. The sphincter muscles are circular muscles that control the movement of things. So again, you don't have all of that one food mass emptying into the stomach at one time. If people have a sphincter that doesn't work properly or is relaxed too much, they can get have issues with gastric emptying here and then here, and that is going to cause some digestive problems. But once food comes in, this shows you the muscle layers. The stomach will do mechanical digestion by peristalsis, so it's squishing and moving, and that's mixing the food, the bolus that comes in, and then there are digestive juices and enzymes that will chemically digest whatever has entered your stomach. So by the time it leaves the stomach, that bolus or mass of food is turned into a thin, watery liquid called chyme. C-H-Y-M-E is chyme. It's almost like K-I-M-E. Some of the digestive juices here involve, or a lot of your digestive juice is made up of hydrochloric acid. We've also kind of talked a little bit about this before. That acid is very strong. It will kill any bacteria that you ingest and also helps break down the proteins in the food, any proteins that you have, or just the food in general. Your stomach has mucus in here, specific cells that will secrete mucus, and it protects the lining of the stomach from this acid. But if you have an issue with that process, then you may feel a burning sensation. That is what an ulcer is, a gastric ulcer. Sometimes too, if you throw up, most of the time, not sometimes, but when you vomit, you know that it kind of burns your throat. That's because you have thrown up this chyme. That's what that liquidy stuff is when you vomit, and it has acid in it. Your esophagus and mouth do not have the same protective mucus that your stomach does, so that's why it burns when it comes up. Heartburn is called that way because of the burning of the acid. If you burp and your stomach's too full, excuse me, or again that sphincter muscle is too relaxed, then when you burp, some of that hydrochloric acid can get back up into the esophagus. The stomach is the first place that your proteins begin being digested. The first thing to be digested in the mouth are the carbs and sugar that you eat. And one of the activities that you have an option of choosing for this week involves you using a piece of bread or a cracker, and you'll kind of experience that process. Next, the food will go into the small intestine, and it's a very, very long tube, very small diameter. And these tubes, if you stretch them out, are pretty long. That's part of another lab activity if you want to do. You can measure by using some math and string and yarn how long your intestines are. But they all get convoluted and squished up into your abdomen, this small cavity. The function of the small intestine is to digest your food chemically. There are lots of enzymes that are in the small intestine. This is where most of your food gets digested. And then also this is where the nutrients, by the time they get to the small intestine, they've all been broken down into the tiny little nutrients. And those are the things that can be absorbed into your bloodstream. We'll look at a specific modification or change that the lining of the small intestine has to help you do this in the other video. This is part of it. These villi are finger-like projections that increase the surface area. And inside each villi, I don't think this slideshow shows it, but there are capillaries that come up in here, and so as the nutrients come in, they can diffuse across this membrane and go into the blood vessel so that you can absorb the nutrients into your bloodstream. Oh, there it is. Sorry, I forgot. Each villus is composed of cells that have microvilli. I don't think you have this on your notes. And this shows you the microvilli here, right there, and the blood vessels are really close to it, so they can absorb the nutrients that have been, or they can diffuse across the membrane into the capillaries and transport it to the rest of your body. This is a kind of a comparison. Why is it good to have these villi and the folds? If it didn't have this shows you how much surface area you would have in the inside of your small intestine, which isn't bad, but by folding it the way it is, now you can see how the surface area can improve drastically. It's like if you have one piece of paper and you just lay it flat, versus if you fold it up, you can keep folding more pieces of paper and more pieces of paper and have more paper in a specific area than if you just had a flat piece of paper. And it says, in fact, the surface area is comparable to a tennis court. So you have a lot of surface to absorb nutrients, which is obviously good for you. Continuing with the notes now, we have, there are some accessory organs. So this is after your number 4 of the digestion number 4, small intestine, because these organs supply enzymes into the small intestine. Remember, these are accessory because food doesn't move through them, but they dump chemicals into your small intestine to help you digest. The liver is a large red-brown organ that makes bile. Here's your liver. It's right below. You see the lung there, and there's your heart. This would be your diaphragm, what we talked about in the respiratory system last week. So right below that, if you're feeling your on your right side, right below your diaphragm, that would be your liver. The organ would be found there. So it makes bile, and it takes it to the gallbladder that stores it. The gallbladder will release the bile into the small intestine, and it helps break down fat. You'll learn in an activity online what that actually does. How does that help us? The pancreas is right here below the stomach and kind of underneath it. You can see part of it's behind the stomach, and then you can see a little bit of it there. It makes lots and lots of digestive enzymes for all the different foods, carbs, fats, lipids, and it also makes insulin, which helps regulate blood sugar, and we kind of talked about that with the endocrine system. Number 5 then talks about the large intestine. The function of that is to absorb water from any undigested chyme. Remember, that's kind of a liquidy stuff, and so as it moves through your large intestine, that will absorb the water if you have a normal situation. The chyme can actually be in your large intestine for as long as 3 days. So even though you eat some food on Monday, you may not poop it out until Tuesday or Wednesday. Just depends on your specific body process and how much water you need to reabsorb. If you are dehydrated and not drinking enough water, your chyme will stay in your body longer, so it can absorb as much water as possible out of it. If that happens, sometimes it can go longer than 3 days, and that's what constipated is. And when you finally do poop, it's like hard little rocks because you have reabsorbed all the water. The opposite of that, then, if it doesn't stay in there long enough to absorb all the water, you may have a bacterial or viral infection that makes you not keep your chyme in the large intestine. And so if you think about what watery poop is, that's diarrhea. So diarrhea is the way it is because the water is not being reabsorbed, either through something wrong with your intestine or some sort of infection. You have an appendix that's attached to the large intestine. They used to say it was an organ that didn't really do anything. Sometimes you can have the way it is, and it's hard to see on this picture, but it kind of is a little tail-like appendage that is kind of has a weird angle. So sometimes chyme can get stuck in there, and if it gets stuck long enough, for a long period of time, sometimes bacterial infections can occur, and you have an enlarged appendicitis. If it gets bad, you may have to have an emergency appendectomy where they actually go in and take that out. You don't really need your appendix. They now know it has some sort of immune response, and I think that was one of the organs that you labeled on your immune system diagrams back a long time ago, it seems. But if you take it out, you'll be fine. If you don't take it out and you have that infection, it'll grow and grow, and it can actually burst, and all of that bacteria and junk that's not good for you will go into your abdominal cavity, and that could be deadly. So it's important, if you feel like you're having an appendicitis attack, you need to go to the hospital immediately. Then finally, the end of the large intestine is the rectum, which is the place that stores the waste material at this point, and then the anus is the opening where it comes out. So the function of that is to control the release of solid waste and feces. Your large intestine also has good bacteria in it that they kind of digest or eat the waste material that your body doesn't need. It helps you kind of break that down too. And also in the process will release vitamin K, which is a very important vitamin for you. So that whole process in the large intestine is a healthy one. Alright, that is the end of the notes. The other page of the notes is a diagram of the digestive system. So if you want to go ahead and try to fill that in, or you will on your notes page. I'm not going to show you the answers here, but you can go back through this video, and your notes, they actually correspond. The numbers correspond in your notes with the numbers on this diagram page. So use your notes in this video if you need to go back and fill in that diagram, and then you will either print off. If you've printed off and filled these in by hand, be sure you're taking a selfie with your notes so I can see your face with your notes. Or just go back to the assignment in Google Classroom and click the Turn In button, and I will get a message that you have turned in your notes. So thank you for paying attention, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.